Welcome, everyone, to the Bloomington Rotary Club's weekly celebration of service for November 16th, 2021. I'm your immediate past president, Ashley Wesley, standing in for Sally Gaskell. She's off on a trip, enjoying an in-person conference, which she's very excited about. So I'm happy to be here. Before we get started today, I would like to introduce Tim Jensen to offer our reflection, and you may be seated.
But you won't be seated for long. First of all, I want to express our appreciation to Ashley for carrying on all during this pandemic and Zoom. So let's give her a wonderful round of applause. And when you start exploring things for Rotary, you never know what you're going to find. So a couple of weeks ago, when we were talking about All Saints Day, I looked for some material and I found a very interesting YouTube that has organ music. And maybe some of you heard some fine organ music at our hall in honor of Charles Webb this last Sunday. So we know good organ music in this community. And this organist is from Gloucester Cathedral in England, and he's playing the national anthem. There are going to be a few words in a very British accent that'll come on, and then we'll hear the national anthem. And while it's being played, there is a plaque in the cathedral that acknowledges the connection of this piece to Rotary clubs in England. So watch that very closely, as it'll just be on the screen for not a very long time. And then we'll come back after the national anthem. When he starts the national anthem, I would ask you to rise. And this can be part of our honoring of Veterans Day, since we didn't have much chance to acknowledge that last week. Thank you.
The next hymn isn't really a hymn at all. However, it was composed by a former chorister of Gloucester Cathedral, a certain John Smith. John Smith wrote a hymn tune whilst he was here in England, and it's been adopted by you Americans as your national anthem. It's a Star-Spangled Banner. And I thought it would be a great way to end today's virtual church before we go into the Kosharo. You all know the words, but for those people who don't, oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight over the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red flare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave? I think it certainly does. Well, let's hear it on this wonderful organ.
And while we're applauding, let's applaud Michael Shermas. He does this yeoman's job week after week. It gets here early and we really appreciate it. Now, Judy Schroeder gave me an idea a couple of weeks ago when we remembered some of the saints that have gone before that are no longer with us. What I wanted to do today was talk about the saints that are with us, that they're living, but they're not here in the room with us. So that would include all of the people that are on the Zoom broadcasts and any others that you think of. So we're just going to do like Judy did, just name some of those people that we are honoring today. The first one I want to mention is Ron Jensen, who sponsored me into this club, been a really great supporter, always a farmer's market, not able to get out as much these days. Who could you name as somebody that we're missing? Rex Hillary? Okay.
Charlie Osborne.
Osborne.
Paul Hazel.
Thank you.
Paul Hazel.
Okay. Anybody else want to name someone that's not here, but that you'd like to see when the time and the circumstances permit?
Jeff Bradley.
Thank you.
Tom Boone.
I appreciate all of you that are here in the Frangipani room. All of you are out there on Zoom, and let us be thankful for each of them and the contributions they make to this club, community, and world. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. And thank you all for sharing the people that we're missing today. I noticed Tim Thrasher was mentioned as well. And now for our introduction of guest, Owen Johnson, please come forward.
Thank you, former President Ashley. It's always good to welcome guests, and so that we can welcome you properly, when I read your name, we'll appreciate if you would please stand so we can recognize you. Our first guest, who's been invited by Art Omick, is Katie Rudder. And a guest of Kyla Cox-Deckard, Adrian Starnes. Adrian is the Center for Rural Engagement, which I think Kyla has something to do with. We're glad to have both of you. If you have any questions about Rotary, please ask the people at your table, and we'd love to have you back. Thank you.
Thank you. And Joy, do we have any guests on Zoom?
Ashley, no, we do not have any guests. All Rotarians in the Zoom room today.
All right. Well, welcome to you all. Quick thank you to Dave Meyer and Michael Shermas for producing this and making everything go smoothly. I'm sure no one's aware of the problems that happen or the challenges, but because Michael handles it like a champ. So thank you. Zoom manager Joy Harder and remote camera mic operators Martha Foster and Aaron Davis. Our greeter today was Winston Schindel. The reflection was Tim Jensen. And thank you to Owen for introducing our guest, and to Joy. And our roundabout reporter is Jim Bright. We have a few birthdays: Ann Connors, the 12th of November, Walt Kuhn, the 13th, Trent Deckard, the 14th, and Bryce Bowe, the 21st. Happy birthday. 3 member anniversaries: Joe Darling with 3 years, Chris Kroll with 3 years, and Jim Cryway with 33 years. Thank you so much for being part of the Rotary family. I have a few quick announcements before we introduce our speaker for today. Our very own Martha Foster was featured in the Sunday Herald Times story written by Connie Shikalis about her new adventures in fiber arts. You can check it out. Honey Bunch Workshop, documentary filmmaker works in wool and other fibers. It's a fabulous read. I recommend you checking it out and talking to Martha about her fiber arts. It's wonderful. All right, Steve Moberly, would you come forward to give us an announcement about Salvation Army bell ringing?
Thank you, Madam President, fellow Rotarians. Our club has had a long history and tradition of ringing the bells for the Bloomington Salvation Army for 4 Saturdays as we near Christmas Day. That is to help the Salvation Army raise funds to help needy and in need children and families at the holiday season. It will, the money raised there goes all to that charity and will provide gifts, clothing, toys and treats for many children in the Monroe County community. We'll be ringing on 4 different Saturdays, November 27th, December 4th, December 11th, and December 18th. The sign up sheet is online, and I think you probably have all received at least one email asking you to consider signing up. It's an hour shift. We'll be ringing from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m., 11 a.m. to 12 noon, 12 noon to 1 p.m., and 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. So please consider signing up. I do want to thank those who have already signed up. Jim Bright, Art Omick, Shelley Yoder, Owen V. Johnson, Bill Murphy, 2 shifts, Sarah Laughlin, 2 shifts, Bill Brown, Jeff Baldwin, 2 shifts, Scott Shackelford and his daughter, and Chris Michael Morrison. Last year, the ringing by our Rotarians raised over $1,800. We placed 4th among the various entities and groups that do ring. I think we could place 1st, and I'm hoping it can be this year. And I'm also hoping that we'll be able to staff all of the shifts. We have 2 shifts per hour, so you'll be ringing with a fellow Rotarian. It's a pleasant, we'll be in the CART lobby at Kroger East and South. It's dry, it's heated, fresh air is coming in because the doors are opening and closing constantly, and it's a good experience. So please consider signing up to ring the bells for the Salvation Army. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Steve. All right, Dave Meyer, would you please come forward so that we can do the most exciting thing, one of the most exciting things in Rotary, new member induction. We'll also have Beth come forward.
Thank you, former President Ashley. I do want to say that that was a wonderful rendering of the Star Spangled Banner. I have not heard anything quite like it. It is a great joy for me to do what we enjoy periodically, which is to induct new members into our organization. We are fortunate to have 2 new members today, Ruth Boshkoff and Beth Savage. Let me begin by talking a little bit about Ruth. Ruth was born in Chicago. She went to college at Oberlin, where she majored in organ. She returned to Chicago, where she received a master's in education and met her husband, Douglas Boshkoff, who is now deceased. After time in both Cambridge, Massachusetts and Detroit, Michigan, the Boshkoffs settled in Bloomington. Ruth arrived here at the same time as Charlotte Zitlow, and they became friends. Once in Bloomington, Ruth began teaching at St. Charles School, a career that lasted 20 years. She also ran the IU Children's Choir for a decade. Ruth enjoyed volunteering in church and served on the Lotus Board for 6 years. She serves on the Friends of Music board today. Ruth is also a composer and has published many musical works over the years. She is also a proud mother of 4 grown daughters. All right, now turning to Beth. Beth Savage, now retired, was director of the City of Bloomington Volunteer Network for over 20 years. In that role, she worked with more than 250 local nonprofit partners, as well as numerous businesses, Monroe County Schools, other government units, and IU programs. Together, they supported and strengthened community engagement programs in a variety of ways. Beth is an IU alumna with a degree in public affairs and a concentration in environmental health management through the O'Neill School of Public and Environmental Affairs. Beth was a big sister with big brothers and big sisters for over 16 years. She is currently involved with Friends of Lake Monroe, the Per Sisterhood, and the Habitat for Humanity Restore, where she is a regular volunteer. Originally from Philadelphia, she has lived in Monroe County since 1975. She and her husband, Rudy, now deceased, have 2 adult children. So let's turn to the formal part. Beth and Ruth, on behalf of the board and membership of the Bloomington Rotary Club, it's a great pleasure to welcome you as the newest members of the club. We look forward to the fellowship that you will share, as well as your participation in many club projects that make our community, country, and world a better place. Though Rotary is not a political organization, Rotarians are vitally concerned with good citizenship and the election of strong leaders in public office. While Rotary is not a religious organization, it's built on those eternal principles that have served as a moral compass for people throughout the ages. Rotary is an organization of business and professional people pledged to uphold the highest ethical and moral standards. Rotarians believe that worldwide fellowship and peace can be achieved when people unite with the Rotary motto of service above self. Rotary activities exemplify the charity and sacrifice that one would expect from people who believe they have a responsibility to help others. Beth and Ruth, you've been chosen for membership in the Bloomington Rotary Club because your fellow members believe you to be a leader in our community and because you possess the qualities to champion the message and principles of Rotary. You are responsible, you are a representative of your vocation within our club and community. You now become an ambassador of Bloomington Rotary, carrying the ideals of service to all within your sphere of influence. Our community will know and judge Rotary by your character and service. We will also look to you for inspiration as we strive to become better Rotarians. We will now pen Ruth and then Beth.
I'm very proud of Ruth. She's been a real gift to the children of this community for decades, and including my own, who learned how to beat out the rhythm in her basement.
Okay, and now we turn to Beth. Beth. It's already done. Okay, very good. All right, we ask that you, that Ruth and Beth, we ask that you wear your Rotary pens with pride, not only to all Rotary functions, but to your many endeavors as a symbol of your commitment to Rotary ideals and our recognition of your contribution toward a better world. Fellow Rotarians, please rise and welcome our newest Rotarians, Ruth Boshkoff and Beth Savage.
Thank you so much for joining our club. We are so glad to have you be a part of our family. And now, Connie Shakalis, would you please come forward? Let's introduce our speaker for today.
Thank you, past President Ashley. Right now, Lisa Hall is producing the premiere of 2020 COVID the Musical at the Brown County Playhouse. Through this, I have gained insight into who she is. I've always said the best way to know someone is to work with her. Has there been tension, egomania, conflict, gossip, and mask-wearing refusal? What do you think? Has Lisa Hall shown gracious leadership throughout? What do you think? After graduating from IU's Kelly School of Business, getting married to Richard, and raising a family, she got a master's from Moody Bible Institute. Before the COVID musical, she decided to make her first documentary film, The Addict's Wake. It's about addiction's stigma, and this summer, it won a place in the Heartland Film Festival, along with several awards. Heartland Film's goal is to be the destination for connecting audiences and filmmakers, and the festival has grown from 4 days to 11. This is its 30th anniversary. Lisa Hall is a potent and respected name in Brown County. A longtime marketing expert, she also serves women who are suffering from incarceration or addiction. Lisa Dotson Hall is blonde, beautiful, brainy, popular, and benevolent. Do I hate her? What do you think?
Oh my goodness, that's a lot to live up to, Miss Connie. And in the season of sinus in Indiana, I am always dry-mouthed from about here until April. So I had to bring my water. Thank you so much for having me today. I hope I'm worthy of that introduction, and you can't hate me because I still have to produce you for another weekend. I knew that I loved the Rotary Club when I looked up your definition online. This is the International Rotary Club's vision statement. I couldn't find one exactly for Bloomington, but I thought it probably is pretty close. So I'm going to tell you what I loved about what I read. Rotary's vision statement: together, that's a big word, we see a world where people unite and take action to create lasting change across the globe in our communities and in ourselves. Rotary's vision statement: increase our impact. And I personally believe that's a mission statement for each of us as we consider our communities and the issues that our current culture is facing. And so when Connie first invited me, she asked me to come and talk to you a little bit about the Addict's Wake, because there's a story within the story. My husband and I moved from Indianapolis in 2017 to Nashville, Indiana, where we'd had a family cabin. And every time we had to pack up and go home on a Sunday or a Saturday because of kids' activities or whatever, we'd be like, oh, we have to go home. So when my nest emptied and we found a unique property, we sold our home of 25 years in Indy and 9 years, our cabin of 9 years down in Brown County, and we moved down there full time. I knew no one. And I did start serving in our jail just to get involved in the community. And I would go in on Sundays and I would meet these women who I very quickly realized could be me. They had women, they were women of careers and dreams and families and goals and material possessions. They, in a tough moment in their life, had made a decision to use a highly addictive substance, which didn't result well, and it didn't take long for them to become quickly addicted. So in Brown County, about 95% of our people in incarceration are struggling from opioid and meth addiction. And so I thought, wow, I had no idea the prevalence of the problem. And to speak to the power of social media, I was finishing up my master's and I noticed a post on my Facebook from a friend, and she and her husband were getting ready to attend their third funeral in 6 weeks of young men in Carmel who had overdosed fatally. And I had commented that, this was a problem in Brown County, and as a result of that, I had a woman contact me that I didn't know. She said, may I call you? We connected. And she said, do you think there's a problem in Brown County? I said, oh my goodness, I'm learning it's a huge problem. It's not just in Brown County, it's South Central Indiana. It's not just in South Central Indiana, it's in Northern Indiana. It's not just in Northern Indiana. It's from the east to west coast and every county in between. And I will tell you the magnitude of this problem in just a minute. But after we talked for about 2 hours, she said to me, do you think there's a story to tell? And I said, I think we have to continue to tell the story of highly addictive meth and opioid use because it's not getting better, and we cannot just accept this as part of rural living. It cannot just become our DNA, and we're okay with that. And I knew when I moved to Brown County, I was not okay with the stories I was hearing. So I told my husband that night over dinner, hey, I think I'm gonna tell a story in a documentary. And he says to me, well, you need to call Uncle Don. And I'm like, why do I need to call Uncle Don? He said, well, Uncle Don made a documentary in 2008. Uncle Don is my husband's uncle, who was a Wall Street lawyer, very successful gentleman in New York, and took on this documentary called Taxi to the Dark Side. It won an Academy Award, and it changed the way that we treat prisoners at Guantanamo Bay. You see, they had waterboarded a would-be terrorist to death. Turns out he was not exactly the terrorist they thought he was, and there was human outcry. Once I heard that, I thought, wow, film really does have the power to tell a story in a unique way. So we gathered a team. Amy came down, she was my co-producer, and I said, what do we do now? And she said, well, we gotta get a director. So I said, do you know any good ones? And she said, yes, I know a guy by the name of Michael Hussein. I said, I went to IU with Michael Hussein. We dialed him up in my family room. We gathered Michael, who was very interested in the project. We brought Uncle Don in from New York. We sat at my sunroom table, and Don was pretty quiet throughout the whole thing. And he left and he said, I don't know how much money I'm going to be able to give you for your project. I said, Uncle Don, I don't need your money. I need your street cred. I have none. So we formed a team. Don came on as creative consultant. Michael Hussein was director, Amy Pazak co-producer, and all of a sudden I found myself executive producing a film, which I had never done. We set a budget of $185,000 to produce this feature-length documentary, and I had no idea where that money was going to come from. I just felt out of a place of compassion for the stories that I'd heard that I needed to try to move this project along. I felt very passionately about it. I called two friends who I knew had a family foundation, and they are people that I have done mission work all over the world. We've served together in Bulgaria, South America, most recently Africa. And I told them what I wanted to do, and they took a couple weeks to consider it, called me back in June and said, we're going to give you a $25,000 matching grant.
Doing it right now.
Oh my gosh, that's fantastic. Thank you. And Uncle Don got back to New York, and about 10 days later, I got a $5,000 check from him, and he said, go make your film. And so Steve, who was the foundation or the matching grant giver, said, I'm going to release to you $5,000 early, but then you've got to match the other 20. So you can get started. And away we went with $10,000 in August of 2019. And we began filming story after story after story, how substance use disorder is unraveling the lives of so many people that we know and love in our communities. I made a presentation in August to my Rotary Club in Brown County, not knowing a whole lot, being still relatively new. And while I didn't leave there with a ton of support, what I did leave there was conviction and with the passion that just by gauging the response of the Rotarians, I realized that a vision for the emotional awareness for substance use disorder needed to be casted. So it really fueled my fire, because addicts don't set out to become addicts. They make a choice to use a highly addictive substance in a very dark time or a lonesome time in their lives. And it doesn't take long with today's drugs for the hook to get set deep. That lifestyle is one they could never dream of. It's a vicious cycle. It's full of deceit. It's full of defeat, and it's a disease of despair. Hopelessness abides in those where this hook of meth and heroin and opioid pill use is set deep. And I'm going to share with you today why I think all of us should care about this. All of us should care because substance use disorder prior to the pandemic was the #1 health issue facing this nation. It's plaguing our nation. And because of pandemic, fatal overdoses are up 30% across the board, east to west coast. So in this time of great mental health challenges, and in this time of unemployment and of loss and uncertainty, we find that pandemic drug use is soaring. Our healthcare costs, and these are lagging because they typically lag about 1.5 to 2 years behind, but in 2019, just costs for neonatal care, medications, treatments exceeded more than $120 billion a year. Our judicial systems and incarceration and correction centers are overburdened and overwhelmed. In 2019, the total national cost of substance use disorder exceeded $420 billion. And if you're not one person removed with someone struggling with this issue, if you're an employer, employers spend $96 billion a year due to lost productivity and inefficient workplaces due to substance use disorder. This is a modern day plague. The goals of this film were very simple as I started meeting and interviewing people that were so willing to be transparent. And let me tell you, Nashville is tourism dependent. We don't have industry, we don't have a Cook, we don't have an Eli Lilly, we don't have a Cummins. And so raising money in my community is very, very challenging. But I was also worried that there would be backlash because we are tourism dependent. And when you bring a problem into light, I was sure hoping it wouldn't affect tourism. But I have to tell you, my community welcomed the chance to tell this story. They embraced the documentary. They wanted to be healthier and more whole, and they were very anxious to have this film made. The goals were to reduce shame and stigma. It keeps people from getting the help they need. When we look at an addict differently than we look at ourselves or our neighbors who aren't struggling, it is a shame and stigma they feel very deeply. And trust me, they're already judging themselves. And so we need to break down the walls of shame and stigma. My goal was that this film would serve as a clarion call to communities to look at resources, to look at your leadership, to determine what could you do to fight back against this issue. Rural communities typically do not have great leadership in this area, and they are they have a shortage of resources. And so in Brown County, our sheriff's department has linked arms with our superintendent in our schools. Our schools are linking arms with our mental health provider in Centerstone. Centerstone is linking arms with the sheriff's department and going in and serving those in incarceration. We're allowing NA, CA, AA, REC, all these programs to come into the jail to meet people where they are and help them start their recovery program right then and there. So this film is meant to show some of the things that Brown County is doing to fight back, but it's also meant to inspire other communities to look and see what can we do, how can we link arms? Because fighting this with a silo mentality is not helping this issue. We have to debunk that mentality. We cannot go about this alone anymore. One treatment center, one organization, it's not going to work. We have to break outside of that silo thinking and think, how can we join together? Because that's part of your statement, is together we're better. So we join together and figure out how we can combine our resources to have greater impact. We have an annual event called Hopefest, and we gather everybody in recovery and we celebrate their efforts to recover. We bring in music and food, and for the last 2 years, we've had a softball tournament between our sheriff's department and a recovery team who wins the recovery softball bracket. And it is such a beautiful picture of redemption and second chances. And all of us need second and third and fourth chances to get things right. And so I love Hopefest every year, and I look forward to really celebrating those folks in recovery. So the part of commitment that comes with a project like this got very challenged for me in March of 2020, when our world kind of stopped and there was a reordering of everything we knew. And we'd had so much momentum and so much favor in getting this film completed. And yet in March of 2020, I was still $50,000 short of the budget. And we had to take a hiatus because everybody was in quarantine. So one morning on April 7th, my first grandbabies were born in Denver, Colorado. And I say babies because my oldest son and daughter-in-law had twins, Avery and Brooks. Graced the world on April 7th, and I was sitting in Nashville in quarantine and couldn't go. And I was lamenting over a cup of coffee to God and saying, I know you have a purpose and a plan for this pandemic, but I'm not seeing it, and my babies were just born and I'm not there, and I'm not happy about it. And I was just having a real moment with God above, and in my spirit, I heard him say, record it, write it down. I thought, oh my goodness, what does this mean? Michael, my director, was at home with COVID, and a horrible case of COVID, a very serious case of COVID. So we weren't filming anyway because he got very sick, and I thought, what could this mean to write it down? Then I thought, you know, this is such an absurd time that someone is going to put this to a script and score. And I thought, why not it be the Brown County Playhouse? I happen to serve on the board. I do a lot of our grant writing. I do a lot of the fundraising for the Playhouse, which is super hard. Again, in a small, impoverished community, we limp along every year wondering how we're going to keep our doors open. And so I called and knew one playwright I had met during the filming of the documentary. His name is Ashton Wolf. He resides in Indianapolis, but he's had training on the East and West Coast. And I only met Ashton a couple of times, but I knew that he was a very talented man. Sometimes you can just tell that you sense a person has some giftings that not everybody gets. And I called him and I said, hey, I think I'm supposed to record this for the Playhouse. How do you feel about writing a show? And he said, how do you feel about a musical? And I said, 10 times better. And so we began collaborating in this quiet time of not filming. I started collaborating with Ashton on what I wanted in a musical. And we wanted it, one, not to be political. We wanted all the music to simply surround all the shared experiences that no matter who you are, no matter your socioeconomic level, no matter what you did for a living, we were all encountering certain experiences during this pandemic. And so I said, no politics. This has to just be over shared experiences. And it needs to end in hope. It cannot be just a downer. It has to be hopeful. And so as the months started unfolding in April and May and June, you know, we were getting new information almost monthly at the time. Well, every time some big piece of new information would come, we'd have a new song. And by December, and I'm going through this fast, so thanks for tracking with me, but by December of 2020, the film was fully funded. I want to tell you how that happened in the midst of a pandemic. And 2020 COVID the musical was on paper, and it was scripted and scored. And why is that important? I think the arts have been used since the beginning of time to help people process current culture and social commentary. And man, was there a lot of social commentary about the pandemic. We all know this. And so I thought, wow, this would be a tremendous way for our communities to heal healthfully. They could come into a theater, relate to the songs being sung, have this spirit and feeling of hope as they leave, because our human spirit is very resilient. And that's what I wanted the musical to convey. And so the reason that I was also able to achieve the funding requirement for the film is because during the pandemic, many organizations were not able to offer their normal services. So there were extra grant monies that were hanging about. And as I was quiet in those days of quarantining, I was writing grant letters and seeking funding like never before, because for instance, the Indiana Recovery Network could not implement all their programs due to COVID. And so they gave us a $5,000 grant. And that is how I made up the gap in that $50,000. So we had a musical, we had a film, finished filming in January of 2021. We began the editing process of over 100 hours of footage. And that was a bigger task and a daunting task, more so than I ever realized it would be. But we had heard from Heartland that they were looking for Indiana Spotlight films and really wanted us to be there. So we made a great push in the spring to get our editing done to the best of our ability. We entered Heartland Film Festival, and I'm happy to say on October 11th, we premiered to a sold out crowd at the Toby Theater at Newfields in Indianapolis, 547 tickets. And we were the Audience Choice Award winner, and we were a juried winner in the Indiana Spotlight category films. And I want to say a huge shout out to my friend Kyla Deckard and my friend Adrienne Rogers-Starnes, because they cheerleaded me all the way. I told Kyla this in a moment when I was driving home, that I came to the first opioid conference here in Monroe County to really just better educate myself and to build my knowledge base. I walk up to Miss Kyla and I have an 8.5 by 11 paper with a working summary on it. I said, hi, I'm Lisa Hall, I'm making a documentary and here's what it's going to be about. And she was so gracious to me. And I think back about, oh my gosh, I had no track record. I had no funding. I didn't know how this was going to happen, but I believed it would, because I had enough compassion for this issue that it fueled my desire to get this done. And both she and Adrian took many, many phone calls just when I needed to celebrate a new grant, a new gift that came in, and every time I'd inch closer to the goal, one of those two would get a call, and they were always so kind to receive them. So thank you so much. And so there we are. We just premiered 2020 COVID the Musical at the Brown County Playhouse last weekend. And let me tell you something, when you put your work out there, I told Miss Connie I had my armor on. I was ready for the criticism. We'd had a little pushback about, why in the world would you produce a show about a pandemic in the middle of a pandemic? It's crazy, I know. It just seemed to be right with the timing, and it seemed that there were enough people who came Friday, Saturday, and Sunday who were ready to have a sense of and a vision for Hope cast, and that they were ready to process some of the emotions. And I'll be honest with you, I did not expect this, but there were a lot of tears throughout the show. It's all about poignant moments of the pandemic. And the reason why these two initiatives are closely tied together is because they're passions of mine. And I feel compassionate towards a community that has had restaurants not being able to open because of no staff. We're all enduring this. That's happening here in Bloomington. But also what this pandemic has done to the area of substance use disorder is exacerbated it to new heights and new levels. And so I guess the reason why I share all this with you today is to say your organization is about having impact. It's about making change where change is needed. And I hope that if you have that nudge or that little tug at your heartstring, if there's something that you encounter where you think, oh my gosh, I have no idea how I'm going to do that, but I can do that, and it can make a difference, I hope you'll say yes. When the lady asked me if I wanted to make a documentary, very naively, I said, sure. Had I known what was all going to be involved, and that would take 2.5 years and lots of stress along the way, because we did it during a pandemic as well, I'm not sure I would have said yes. I probably would have, but we can do things when we put our minds to it, and we feel strongly about it and passionately about it, and we have compassion towards others. We can get things accomplished that can really have an impact on our community. I'd like to schedule a screening here in Bloomington. We have one in Brown County for the 9th of December, but it is sold out. And I know there are a lot of people from Brown County that are not able to get tickets. And I know there are a handful of friends and people in Bloomington that would like to see this film. So if any of you know where we could get that screening, I'll send a note to the Rotary Club here and let you know. You guys will be the first people I'll say yes to. And I now will just be happy to answer any questions.
Who's the actor for a little bit?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry. That's okay.
You were supposed to be my timekeeper.
Well, I didn't want to stop you.
My mask. Thank you, honey. I appreciate it.
We're going to close our meeting, and then we're going to finish with questions, and I'm sure there are plenty out there. So thank you again for being here and for sharing that story with us. I'm sure there were lots of nudges in the crowd for your cause and for your passion. In recognition of your talk today, we'll be making a donation to Wonder Lab, Children's Science Museum here in town. And next week's speaker is William Porter, and the topic is high-speed rail in Indiana. Let's close the meeting by reciting the four-way test +1 together. Please rise. Of the things we think, say, and do. First, is it the truth? Second, is it fair to all concerned? Third, will it build goodwill and better friendships? Fourth, will it be beneficial to all concerned? And fifth, is it fun? All right, if you'd like to come back up, we can have people ask some questions of you.